Everyone has some sort of a closet that's become too small. A closet is no place to live, and I want to support as many people as I can in stepping out of that prison into the fullness of life that's waiting for them on the other side of that closet door. I'm Nancy Shadlock from Centered Life Coaching. Join me in listening to these Coming Out Chronicles. Get curious about your story, and then see what good things are waiting for you on the other side of your closet door.
You're in for a real treat today. We're doing something a little bit different on the podcast, and I think you're going to like it. I have my client Heather with me today, and in containers of support with me, I often give a superpowers discovery session as one of the things in the container. And Heather hasn't had hers yet. And so we're going to jump the gun and do it tonight together. We'll probably go deeper and do another one for you too, Heather, just because you're jumping in as a guinea pig here today. But I wanted to show some of the beauty of the gene keys and the ways that it can help us really get access to like what's going on internally, and then how it can help show our superpowers, our purpose, the things that drive us that we maybe didn't realize, but then in seeing it on paper, it's like, oh yeah, this is me. And so I'm curious to see what comes up for you. We haven't looked at this at all yet together. And I'm particularly interested in the realm of vocation and like our life's work and what we have to offer the world. And so I think that'll be interesting to see what comes up for you. Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself before we jump in? Because some people may not know who you are or what you're all about. You can share as much or as little as you'd like.
I'm Heather. Turning 50 shortly, so this is a good time for this to be happening at a changing point in my life as my children are older and out of the house, and we're newly empty nesting, so figuring out what the next stage holds. Live in Vancouver, and yeah, excited for this process.
Awesome. Well, if you think back over jobs that you've had throughout your life, and mothering can be one of those jobs too, like what jobs did you love? What things were really frustrating in them? Like what kind of things come up as you think about work that you've had in your life?
I actually originally studied Bachelor of Commerce with a major in hospitality management. So being in the food and beverage industry, and then in conference services and sales. And there were a number of frustrations in that industry. One was shift work. I found that very taxing in having such a different schedule from other people. You're always off when they're on, and vice versa. I also found it a difficult industry because it's very, I don't know, it's kind of a different kind of work where you almost develop very much your own community within that work. And although that had its pluses, it can also create some environments that maybe aren't very healthy. And then one of the things that I found probably the most frustrating is when you're working, particularly in, for instance, conference services, when you're selling meetings or meeting space or weddings, and all of your instructions are filtered to various departments to be executed. So whether that be in rooms for accommodation or food in the kitchen, or maintenance and setup and dishwashing and every other department, and you lose complete control of everything that you've promised the client when you have to hand that off. And I found that very nerve-wracking. After the wrong wedding cake was served at a wedding, that was really hard to explain to a client. So that was frustrating. And one thing I probably didn't like, some of the things that I've liked the most, probably mostly in my volunteer work and in my role as a mother. We're planning and organizing. I've always really enjoyed doing research and sharing that research or sharing my experience. So having children who had high anxiety, or one of our children's on the autism spectrum, mood disorders and mental health journeys and suicide and all the things that have crossed our path in life. I guess people would send people to you based on your experience and sharing that. And I did enjoy that. I do enjoy that. Also, being a resource for newcomers, when new people are coming into the community or into the schools, I enjoy kind of taking people under my wing and helping them. And then earlier, probably before I had my own children, I really loved working with children. It was one of my favorite things to do, and I did a ton of it when I was younger. And then once I had my own kids, that was enough. So I don't know if that interest is still there or not, or if that's something that would be a vocation.
Mm-hmm. Can you think of a moment in work that felt really frustrating?
Yeah, many. Do you want me to relay just one?
Share one.
I don't know. The first one that jumped into my mind was actually, I was working, the last thing that I did was I started to do adult training and development, and I trained in customer service and leadership and hospitality. And I also worked in the logistics area, which trying to execute what the salespeople had promised in this case, and being on the other side of it, where salespeople can sometimes overpromise. I was living in Toronto, and the client's event was in Blue Mountain, which is a little ways away, dead of winter, and the product with all of their materials did not arrive through customs on time. And so they have their whole conference in Blue Mountain waiting for this to start, and there are no materials there for them for the next morning. And so arrange, to get in your car and drive to Blue Mountain and drop off these materials. And that was a moment of frustration of just, we've got to be able to manage this better.
Right. Because you could see like somewhere higher up, this could have been managed better.
Yeah, I think so. I think there are, now we just do it all online, right? But these were the days before that. So, yeah, there was no electronic copy, and everything was highly proprietary and customized. So these materials would have been printed for this particular company. So yeah, I think I could see different ways of having a little bit more cushion, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or even having the salesperson who promised being personally responsible rather than the logistics department.
Right. Yeah. Fair. I like it. Well, let's jump in and look at your chart together. I thought for those of you who are listening, you might want to pause it right now and like find it on the YouTube, because I'm going to walk you through finding your chart yourself. And I think you'll find it interesting. So you can see my screen now, right?
Yeah.
So if you go to the genekeys.com, and anybody can do this, it's a free profile. I used to be so into the Enneagram for like the past decade. I've been very into it. Were you into the Enneagram?
Briefly, yeah.
Do you know where you fall on that?
Oh, I knew you were going to say but it was that the helper, the nurturer. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But I found it very enlightening when they do the cons, like you have all these wonderful qualities in your Enneagram number, but then there are also the things that are, can be your things to watch out for. And I thought that was really enlightening. And
yeah, I also fall kind of on the 2/4. They're interrelated, but yeah, that need to be needed, and then the need to be special. Okay, so yeah, you can go to thegenekeys.com and get your own free profile. Right up here on the top, we can press free profile. And then you can put in your information. So we'll put Heather in. Okay, so then you get this funky profile. And this is kind of like the neuron of the gene keys, and it's a hologenetic profile. So it's kind of, you can look at it from all different shapes and angles and things. But the gist of it is these spheres. And there's 3 different sequences. So there's the genius sequences in green. So it's these 4 green circles. And they're kind of like your life's work, things like that. And then there's the red, which is your love sequence, the Venus sequence. And so then it goes up into these red ones, and things like your attraction and your purpose in relationships. And then the blue is your prosperity, and like that's where the vocation sphere is, and like your life's work again, but like from a different angle. And so there's so much here, and we're just like doing a very quick crash course on it. You and I will go into it deeper. But I thought it's interesting to let people in on this amazing tool, because it's been super impactful for me. I feel like in some ways it's like rejuvenated my spirituality and brought in this like new life to think about contemplation. Richard Rudd is the man that kind of got this download about the gene keys, and it's a derivative from human design, and human design is from the I Ching from China, the chakras, the Kabbalah is a Hebrew wisdom, and astrology. And so it's like, I love how that brings the wisdom from so many different cultures around the world together into these tools. And Richard Rudd would say, often Christians will pray and like really specifically pray for a certain thing and ask for these certain things. And maybe Buddhists would be on this other side of the spectrum with like empty your mind and just like sit there in nothingness and meditate. And then contemplation is kind of in between these two, where you come with a word. And so each of these spheres have a different word, and you just sit with it in your contemplation and let it roll around on your tongue like a fine wine, and notice all the notes. And so each of these spheres has a shadow frequency, and then a gift frequency, and then what he calls the siddhi frequency, which is a Sanskrit word for like the highest fulfillment. This is how you spell it, SIDDHI. And so we can look here and see like your life's work is to move from dishonesty to intimacy and ultimately transparency. And like those are some big words. Like kind of like, oh, what? But he has like a write-up for each word. He has offered an audio for each of them. And so if those of you listening, if you come and do your profile, often right here you'll have an audio that he'll give you one for free on the website. And then otherwise you can like, I think it's like $3 for each of the other spheres. You can get an audio to listen to. It's like a 20-minute kind of contemplation on these words, and that kind of spurs your own contemplation to go deeper with each of them. And so I'll read you kind of the Cole's notes of what they have for that gene key for your life's work, what you're here to do. You ready?
Ready.
Your life's work, Heather, lies in the domain of human relationships. Given the nature of your prime gifts, you are alive in a very poignant time. The events taking place in the world and their future outcome are deeply connected to you and the work you do. Your role, whatever specific specific form it takes is to break down barriers and boundaries between human beings. You will realize that you have a gift in this direction, but your gift can only truly flower if you are the example. You must be a role model of honesty and transparency. The more you hold things back from others, the more uncomfortable your life will become. If at any time you experience resistance in one of your relationships, you must ask yourself, what am I hiding from this person? If you own whatever it is and express it openly, the resistance will disappear. You can base your entire life around this single gift. You're smiling. What's
I
coming up for
am.
you?
Because you remember telling me that?
Without even knowing?
Yeah, I in one of our coaching sessions, I think I used the phrase that I don't know, I can't even remember what it was, but something about being transparent and being like, I don't know, everything out there, like everybody knowing what I thought and what I felt. And you called me on that. And I did a lot of thinking about it, and I'm still doing a lot of thinking about it. And I don't even think I realized like that I was hiding anything, let alone what I was hiding or things that I was keeping masked in myself, which was really interesting because I had always thought that I was such an open person. And yeah, it's so interesting with that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's your life's work, is to keep circling around that and go deeper and deeper and deeper.
Yeah, and breaking down the barriers and boundaries, and that it's about human relationships. It's probably the thing that if I think about the things that I'm interested in learning, they're always in that area. It's where my best conversations happen, and the most articles that I'm drawn to or books or whatever. So that's interesting to me too.
That's cool. So there's other spheres here that we could go along. The evolution sphere is like what you're here to learn. Yours goes from victimization to freedom to freedom. And this is the only one that has two of the same word, different nuances for it. And then your radiance is what keeps you healthy. And so moving from superficiality to self-assurance and ultimately to presence.
Which really ties into that first one.
Yeah. And is something that I see you really working on, like to live in presence. Because you can tell that nourishes you already.
So interesting.
And then the purpose is to move from force to strength to majesty. So let's read what that is.
Do you want to majesty?
I know, right? Do you want to read it, or do you want me to read it to you?
The purpose one?
Mm-hmm.
Whatever you want.
Yeah, if you want to read it, go for it.
Okay. My purpose, what deeply fulfills me. Whatever you do in life, whether it is recognized by millions or known only to a few, the purpose of your life does not lie in the field of achievement. Of all people, you have the capacity to achieve great things, but for you, that is of no concern. What matters for you is simply to lose yourself in the activity itself. The joy of movement is your reason for living, to feel life flowing through you and to be actively engaged in an activity of your own choosing without thought or concern for the future. Most people think of purpose in terms of attainment, but for you, purpose lies in physical movement and the beauty of muscle and sinew, breath and bone. Your purpose lies hidden in these moments, which are occurring all the time. I think I need time to digest that one.
Yeah. Whenever there's muscle and sinew in a paragraph, you probably need time to digest.
I know. I don't think I've ever had that in a paragraph before, accompanied with breath and bone. But what really it is really interesting though, because right at this very moment, as we do our work together, at this kind of pause in my life and fork in the road, so to speak, I keep pushing back against all the things that people want me to do, knowing that, you know, whatever you have a talent or have shown a ability to do something and people want you to pursue that. And that has not been my intuition to follow that, but rather to kind of try out living, which is kind of, it ties into all the things that what we just read on all these levels. So I thought that was just a moment in time and kind of just putting pause and not wanting to re-enter real life after we lost our daughter and COVID. And but maybe there's more to that. Maybe it's something longer.
Mm-hmm. There's something deep within you that just wants to experiment in just being. Is that what I hear you saying?
Yeah. And to kind of read it again, that in my family, achievement is highly valued, and work ethic and accomplishments. You know, I think a lot of families that's valued. It's kind of how you have been taught to exist in life. But I think there is part of us that gets lost with that, because we are focused so much on that achievement and, you know, what we've all, you know, the whole thing that people are reassessing with COVID. And I think to be engaged in an activity of your own choosing without thought or concern for the future, like, when have we ever permitted ourselves to do that, except as a child, because you know, somebody else was worried about your future and what you were having for dinner and is the house clean and whatever else. And I hadn't related it into the physical movement, but we've been talking about that, you and I, that it's one of the things that I moved away from as I got older because of my children's physical and mental makeups. Physical activity was not in our lives in the way that it would have been for my own individually. And so just coming back into even understanding that that is a love and that it can look lots of different ways, and but how life-giving that is. Yeah.
It's really cool.
Yeah, it is.
This is what I mean about, like, it reflects back to us something about ourselves that we have like this deep knowing of, but then it brings it to the forefront more. Eh?
Yeah, and this one seems multi-layered, like the whole muscle and sinew thing. I got to digest that one still, but yeah, I think overall I wouldn't have called it for sure, like it you know. Mm-hmm. But it resonates. Yeah.
There is the Gene Key book, so you can get a giant book that has like a write-up for
light bedtime reading, Nancy. Right.
I only read like one Gene Key at a time because they're so rich, and it's like, you know, 4 pages of one Gene Key at a time and all the different aspects of it, and even more that you can come up with. But I love that, moving from force to majesty to strength to majesty.
Yeah. Well, that's quite a word, majesty. Mm-hmm.
So then I'm going to kind of bump us along here a little bit and get to this vocation sphere, because it's just been like really exciting for me to study it more and to look at each of these gene keys, you'll notice that there's a decimal point after them. So that was 34 that we were just looking at, but it was 34.6. And there only will be up to 6. There'll be a 0.1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And that's based off of the I Ching from China, which is these little holograms, hexagrams around the circle are 6 lines, and they have little chop marks at different points from the ancient Chinese wisdom that they each kind of have a little picture and a meaning. And so depending on which decimal point you have has a different quality for each of these. So like 34 would be your purpose, but then 0.6 has a little bit different swing on it than someone that would have a 34.2. And so it's like, if that wasn't already enough to digest 3 words, there's also a different slant on it.
Wow.
But as we jump up to your vocation sphere, your vocation is to move from codependence to sensitivity, and then ultimately sacrifice. And so I looked up 19 in the Gene Keys book because I was curious about that codependence, right? Because it's kind of become like a buzzword in our society these days. And this is what it says. The 19th shadow of codependence has its roots deep within our tribal ancestral past. Codependence refers to the state of consciousness below independence. To be independent means to rely only upon yourself, whereas to be codependent means to rely on outside agencies. As primitives, we primarily relied upon nature for our survival. And because we relied upon an outside agency, we anthropomorphized it. In other words, we created gods to represent that agency. Thus, it is out of the 19th shadow that all world religions were created. Our relationship with God or a set of gods is a purely codependent relationship because it's based on this need for outside authority, which is like super interesting to think about. I've been reading White Fragility lately and looking at like how missionary work was going overseas often to colonize and just like spread whiteness around, and even some of that idealism of like, you're not resourceful on yourself, you need to rely on God to give you these things, and it like almost outsources our agency, which is like oof, this is a mind trip from going against what I was taught growing up.
Yeah.
But then it goes to the city of sacrifice. The path of frequency through the 19th gift goes from codependence to independence and finally to interdependence. Interdependence represents a quantum leap between the other two, and its realization is the future destiny of our species. In a codependent relationship, both partners have sacrificed a part of their true selves to the relationship, and the resulting lack of synthesis they feel drives the negative patterns of the relationship. In a relationship that's truly interdependent, both partners also sacrifice their sense of individuality into a higher vision of their divinity, holding nothing back for themselves at all. The true meaning of interdependence is about entering into a state of union with all beings in the cosmos, which involves the death of the separate self. This kind of sacrifice can only occur when you give your heart unconditionally to another. Instead of dying, you are actually reborn as a higher dimensional being. In surrendering your smaller self, you attain realization of your greater self. Oof.
Yeah. Just small goals.
Right? Yeah, because then it goes on. Those with the 19th city, the focus is always on the future needs of humanity rather than the current needs. These people understand what it is to come as well as what we must go through. They understand what is to come and as well as what we must go through. Such people stand alone as heralds of a future consciousness, and their lives are a magnificent example of sacrifice to that consciousness. They emerge during times of great mutation, since they themselves are in the grip of that mutation. With their hypersensitive, mutated DNA, they see the new form emerging and do their utmost to prepare people for the coming consciousness shift. They are highly sensitized bridges to the new human and have the ability to siphon information about the new paradigm from behind the veil of the future into the present. Whew.
Wow.
Just a little vocation for you to lean into.
Yeah, no kidding. What's the job description of that one, Nancy?
Yeah, it kind of cheapens it to say job, even.
Yeah, doesn't it? Yeah. It is interesting though. Yeah. There's I don't know if you want response to that.
Yeah, I'd love to hear what comes up for you.
As I mentioned, we had a daughter pass away just over a year and a half ago, and she had a long battle with mental health, and as Nancy, you know, but for your listeners, and including a long time in the hospital. And she was one of those very unusual cases where just nothing worked to treat her symptoms. And she, you know, after months in the hospital and many medicine tries and genetic testing and everything else, they could not figure her out. And they just kept talking about the complexity of her case. And so it was very frustrating to be on that journey with her where she was in so much pain. And part of the journey that I've gone through since she died, I see things a little differently, and I'm more in tune with maybe a broader view as you know, this consciousness and inner, I don't know, the metaphysical, for lack of a better word. And one of the things that's come up as I really struggled with if Kira left behind all of the pain and the suffering, then why was there a need to go through it in the first place if that was part of the planned journey? And several times in different facets, it's come up that the reason she needed to suffer so greatly, and as did we in accompaniment over, you know, several years, was in order to make the impact of change. And part of that was that it was almost like she was ahead of her time in this mental health struggle that the world is in, where teen suicide is often seen as impetuous and impulsive, and parents might not know, and it's a very short-term kind of thing. Whereas Kira's journey was long-term and unfixable and unrecognizable, and the world wasn't ready for it yet. We didn't have the answers. Even the best doctors in Canada did not have the answers. And so when that describes taking us to the next level, it's come up a few times that as I've tried to figure out where is my role in like what was the purpose of that? Like there's got to be a reason that all of this came across our path, and what am I supposed to do with that information? And I'm not being very good at making it concise or even being able to put language to it, but there was this thought that it was about something that wasn't there yet, and that was where our input would come as something for the future rather than the present. And so where I kept struggling to find my place in advocacy or understanding in the now, it really felt like it's not about the now. This is, we need to really blow up everything we know about mental health and that understanding and think about it in an entirely different way, and not just about the brain, but the body and the soul and everything. So I don't know. That's what came to my mind when, with that very intense vocational strategy you were reading.
What came up for me was like, I know you to be a very sensitive and in tune person with different energies, noticing things. And so I can see like you use that giftedness and you're like honing it to use it even more powerfully. And I can see that it has a deep purpose in your life. And I'm excited to see where that takes you.
Yeah, I'm excited to keep honing it. It's a difficult thing to get to enhance in your life, or attract, or I don't know what the word is.
It's different. Not a lot of people are there yet, but I think it really is. You're a herald of the future. Like as we grow and expand our consciousness, more and more people are going to become aware of the metaphysical and all that's around us that we aren't even paying attention to.
I think so.
Thank you for sharing that. There's one more thing that I want to touch on before we close today, because we could be here for days and days. But so this point 4, remember I was talking about the I Ching, there's these different qualities. And so the point 4 of your vocation sphere, it's here, like it's about sales, but more about connection, even like a director. I'm going to read some of the qualities of the point 4 that so to have the 4th line vocation is to be a spokesperson. Such gifts are given to us to serve the whole. And although the 4th line wound may feel reluctant to engage at this level, they do have to overcome the fear that they inherited in their very early years. When we say that the 4th line is the most natural salesperson of all the lines, it doesn't mean in business only. The open 4th line is always selling their heart. They're here to create more openness, to help others overcome their fears, and to be examples of open-hearted communication. Like the 4th line, the 3rd line can be hugely successful in the business context. However, the role and style of the 4th line is very different. Their role is more like the director of the movie. And so there's kind of like a scene being set in the book about the different lines. And like line 1s are the script writers, line 2 are the different people. And I'm a line 3, which is the producer, which is like in touch with all the different aspects, bringing the script writers and the wardrobe and the director, everyone together to communicate. And then you're the line 4th, which is more like the director of the movie. And they have to work closely with people, which involves diplomacy, conviction, and focus. The 4th line knows what the movie should look like, and their one-pointed drive will ensure that everyone else comes into harmony around that direction. The 4th line is comfortable taking control and guiding others to work towards a collective vision or ideal. This is where the notion of sales comes in. The 4th line can diffuse difficulties through their sheer strength and goodwill of character. And I thought of this part when you were talking at the beginning about the roles that you've played and like being in the logistics, but being like, this, if we looked further up, someone directing this could have planned better. And it just like affirms that, like the point 4 for you is really important. And where you're gifted, like even if you think about organizing a whole family, a household with all kinds of complex needs, like you directed all of that, and it's no wonder you're feeling some empty nestness now, because that's a lot of things taken off your plate. So yeah, now how can you use that line 4 in some other way?
That is, it resonates, like it's something that I enjoy. I think like it's something that fulfills me and kind of lights me up when you get to do that,
Yeah. Does anything come up that you would think you would want to like put your heart into in that realm?
Well, I'm not sure. I had assumed that it would be in some way related to one of our journeys and with our children. And whether that, I thought it would be mental health, but more recently it's been with autism and the queer community for our daughter who is still with us. And it's interesting, the advocacy that we've done with that. And again, how, you can be on a very small, like a very micro level and have a very internal view of that in your own experience. So it does appeal to me to expand that lens and have a bigger focus and a broader reach, I guess, for some of the things that I think are important and that, I think would lead us forward in some of those areas. But at the same time, those are just the things that have crossed my path. I don't know if there's, I guess my intuition, if I, try to listen to it as best I can in its junior status, is that it hasn't come yet. I don't know what that's going to look like yet. I feel like it's coming and it will become clear, but I don't think it's clear yet. And I'm really hesitant to, stick my flag in the sand somewhere that's just because it's there, so to speak, or because I feel comfortable there or I've done it before, or I feel like it's harder to wait, but I think it will be, it feels like the right thing to do, that it's not quite there yet.
Yeah, it sounds like living into that beingness some more and seeing what emerges.
Yeah, one of the things that I find interesting was when you talked about purpose and fulfilling, but that's not what is vocation, and so I have to think about that, and because I think I was confusing my purpose and my vocation, and so I think I have to think about separating those or aligning those or something, because you're absolutely right. Living into that moment and being very active and doing and being able to participate in life again is really novel. Like I just feel the huge novelty of that after being really in such a small captive state based on, the challenges in our family, to now having a little bit more space to just breathe and just actually just be present, as we said. And so I do feel like a lot of excitement, and maybe that's just what needs to happen first. Maybe that part, I almost feel like it's just breathing oxygen back into my body and, kind of reinstating, the physical being, and then maybe the rest of it will follow after that. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. It's beautiful. Keep listening to your intuition and it will guide you.
One hopes. I hope.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for being present here today and sharing this. This is a lot of vulnerable things, and I'm really grateful for you sharing your life with us. I have this course starting on Friday, and I feel like in some ways I haven't done it justice in explaining it, because I've called it work that fits, and helping people come into work that fits, because a lot of different people I've worked with have done the hard work of coming out, but now they're into this place of, okay, now what? Like I have so much more that I want to share with the world and in my life. And it, as we're doing this here today, it makes me realize like it's so much bigger than just like finding a job that fits you, but it's like helping people understand their higher purpose in life and their deep calling. And we're going to use this tool and a few other kind of magical quizzes and experiences that I've crafted to help people get clear on this. And so if any of you are listening and are leaning in with this and like, I want to know what my purpose is, I want to know what my vocational thing is, send me a message, and I'd love to get you in the group if we're still, this is coming out on Wednesday and it starts on Friday, so we're cutting it a little close. But either way, I do this session with people where people can come and discover their superpowers. So come and do one with us, because it's exciting. And I love seeing what lights up for people after reading this and having it brought to the forefront of our awareness. Heather, is there anything you would like to say in closing that this experience has been like for you?
Oh, I feel like I've got some homework to do. It's a neat experience. I think it gives you it's giving me lots of food for thought, and which is what I need. I think, it's nice to have things to think about and gather and get perspective on and challenge yourself a little bit. So I didn't know I wanted this or needed it, but it was really cool. And I'm really glad I had it. And I've done enough things with you now that I would highly recommend come out to Nancy's courses or come and do this. I think it's anything I do with you is always mind stirring and fun. So
awesome. Thank you. I love about it too is that it just gives you things to ponder. Like it's not so pointed that you're like, oh, now I know I'm going to go and be a doctor or whatever, but it's like,
darn it.
Yeah, right. Which is frustrating, but also kind of liberating and expansive to be like, okay, let me come and ponder this for myself and see how it shows up in my own actual life.
That makes you a very active participant in your life, I think.
Which is really the only way to be.
As much as that's exhausting.
Totally. All right. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for listening to the Coming Out Chronicles. If you enjoyed it, give it a like. And if you think it would be helpful for someone else, please share it with them. If you'd like to connect with me, reach out on social. I'd love to support you on the next chapter of your coming out story. Until next time, this is Nancy Shadlock from Centered Life Coaching.